There we go.
All right. Well, hi, my name is Svetlana Baranova. I attend MTSU. I'm currently a junior and I am in event planning. And then please introduce yourself and your position as well.
Fantastic. I'm Melinda Hudgins-Noblitt. I'm Senior Manager of Recruiting Programs for Asurion and
All
also
right.
a True Blue alumna.
Yay! All right. So, in your position, what all are you in charge of and like what does it all entail?
Yeah, so this role I moved into about a year, maybe 15 months ago. I'm looking at the calendar now, realizing it's already almost November. So this one is definitely much less event planning than I have done in the past. But I will say a lot of what I've learned over the course of, my entire professional career, I think prepared me for this because there's a lot of project management that goes into play. Um,
Mhm.
and as you'll learn, or if you've already been learning, there's tons and tons of project management with each event. So in this role, I am charged with developing programs that create formalized pathways for our frontline employees who are in more hourly level, entry level roles to upskill and move into professional corporate level roles.
All right.
So for instance, earlier this year, we launched um, a software engineer apprenticeship for 5 frontline employees who came from a variety of roles, but they are upskilling over the course of 10 months to become software engineers. So this is the first program of its kind in the entire state of Tennessee.
That's awesome. Um, Whenever you did or like still do events, how do you choose a team to work the event, or are they already kind of assigned to you and who you get to work with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that all depends on the nature of the event and then the nature of the function. So in this role, I'll say I have a team of um, I'm on a part of a larger team that's called a talent attraction and outreach. And then that team is part of a bigger team called diversity and talent strategy. And so within that team, we do have a lot of folks who represent our employer branding. And then, so typically we'll lean on some of my team. Again, it depends on the nature of the event. If I know that we are specifically recruiting engineers, for example, then I'll also tap some folks who are in the business, some current software engineers to come support. But we have developed, in my previous role, I was employer brand manager and launched brand, excuse me, I forgot what we called it now. We launched an employer brand ambassador program. And so essentially we were training our employees on how to speak about Asurion to go represent us in a more unified way at any event. So that program is live now, and folks can go through that training. So they're learning, how to talk about Asurion. We joke that if you ask like 10 different people in our organization what we do, you're going to get 10 different answers because the organization is so big. We've got 20,000 employees across the world in 23 different countries. And so we're all doing something different. So if you ask someone in supply chain what we do versus someone in, finance what we do, you're going to get very different answers. And so that
Mhm.
ambassador program really allows our employees to share a consistent message.
For events, what events do you typically do? Are you more in conventions where there's a ton of booths set up, and what do you show to the people walking around? Do you sell anything specific? Do you sell an experience, a product, etc.? What would you say would that
Yeah,
be?
that's a great question. So when I was employer brand manager, that is exactly what I asked when I came into the role. I was tasked with standing up our employer brand. So Asurion has always been what we call a white label company, in that we haven't had previously, until more recently, we didn't have our own customers. So we had clients and we were working with their customers. And so unless you had to file a claim or you needed tech support, you didn't really interact with our folks. You would just call your Verizon or AT&T or whoever your mobile carrier is. And so as we grew into that large global technology solutions company I mentioned, we really needed to develop a brand for ourselves. We needed to give engineers, a reason to come look at us versus going to the Facebooks and Amazons and Googles of the world. And so I said, we need to share our story. We need to explain who we are in an experiential way. And we need to do it, what we're selling, if you will, our product is a career within this organization. And so we developed a really cool, God, Svetlana, you're making me think about what we called all these things. It's been like a year. Let me think what we called it. Okay. So we created a really cool tech-centric booth. So it's really, it's a lot easier to explain who we are through the booth setup. And I will say we participate in lots of different sizes and types of events. So we created really cool interactive concept where we would invite attendees to come up and find out their tech talent personality. And so through a series of, it was a BuzzFeed style quiz, and we would ask them a series of questions and they would find out, are they the problem solver? Are they the tech guru? And then we had corresponding, stickers for each personality that they could take home. And then in addition to that, we had an entire backdrop with all these really bright colors. We had went through a rebranding last year. So we had all of those tech personalities up, and they could we'd ask them initially like, oh, what do you think your personality is? And they would guess and they'd take the quiz and then they'd find out. And so it was really neat for them to be able to compare. And so at the end of the questionnaire, we would ask them, are they interested in joining our talent community? And so that's how we would build our robust, in some cases, they were actively seeking a role. In other cases, they weren't maybe necessarily looking, but they wanted to stay in contact with us. And so we could send up follow-up email marketing to say, hey, it looks like you're interested in a role in legal, or it looks like you're interested in a role in supply chain. And then we can target them later and say, you're in Nashville, we have these 3 new roles available, click here if you're interested, which is really cool. But so in addition to that interactive component, we had charging stations. So we had some super cool lounge coffee tables, really cool trendy chairs and seating options. So they could sit and charge their phones if they wanted, or we had a charging locker. So they could leave their phone, go participate in the rest of the event, know that it's safe under lock and key and charging, and then come back and pick it up. And so in their minds, they're connecting, okay, I have a mobile device. This is some kind of tech company. We're actually helpful. That's one of our, make it easy for them. And then, and they can come back and retrieve it. And then hopefully we've captured their information. And so we can continue having a relationship with them. So that's one example. We participated in 3686, which is if you think of Nashville as being kind of a smaller Austin, 3686 is really that smaller South by Southwest. So lots of TED style talks, very tech centric, entrepreneur centric event. And so we really, unveiled it there. But then we also created many pop-up versions of that. So that might be one banner, a small pop-up banner, a high top pub style table, one charging station, and some cool swag. And then the quiz is taken on an iPad. So that's something that could be mobile and be in a much smaller footprint, because we recognize that there, we don't always have a 20 by 10 space, for example. And so we needed something that could be quick for campus recruiting. It could be quick for our employee resource groups to go use at an event maybe they're participating in. But we could also spread out and have this huge footprint like we did at Live on the Green last year.
All right. Between all of these events that you've done, have you ever ran into an issue of event safety, maybe going to your previous positions? How do you control that, making sure that nobody does get hurt? Especially, I remember you working at Stones River Mall as the event manager, marketing and events manager there. And I know you did a lot of kids events. How did you control that and make sure that, nobody breaks a leg jumping up and down or greeting Santa?
Absolutely. What comes to mind automatically was my first Halloween at Stones River. And so this would have been, maybe 2013. So
Okay.
a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I started in the role in May. And so besides back to school, Halloween was really kind of the next big holiday. And my predecessor at the time, she allowed the stores to offer trick-or-treating if they wanted to, but it wasn't really a mall-wide event. It wasn't sponsored really by the management office or anything like that. And I was like, I think we can really do this. We can really blow it out of the water. And center court is really where the hub of activity is. So we wanted to kind of centralize it there. Well, what I did not anticipate was that there would be torrential storms in every trick-or-treating and trunk or treat and church event, and everything was canceled. And so we had what felt like the entire county show up to Stones River Mall ready to trick or treat. And we had lots of interactive opportunities for them. We had like a photo booth and we had candy, but we also had other things that weren't really, it wasn't so candy centric. It was kind of like here and meet at some of our stores. We had our mascots out for photo ops and that sort of thing. And then all these people showed up and we were like, holy cow. And I still remember pictures of just, it was like, shoulder to shoulder people and kids, and everybody's in costumes. And so security definitely helped us. And we tried to get folks, in line. Thankfully, we had a couple of churches who showed up and said, hey, our event got canceled. Can we just set up a table and hand out candy? And so that was really helpful. So thankfully, nothing really happened bad at that event, aside from, not everybody got the whole bucket of candy that they wanted. So we had some angry parents, but that really helped us plan for the following 4 years. And so that's where we took that as a learning lesson or a lesson learned, and spread our event out across the mall. So we had treat stations set up, and then we encouraged the stores. We printed out these jack-o'-lanterns for them to put in their window if they had candy, and explained to them to take it down once they ran out of candy. And then so that way, and we introduced a costume contest. And so really, again, recentered the event as an experience outside of the trick-or-treating, where initially that focus was on the trick-or-treating. And so people expected a lot of candy.
Mm-hmm. Well, clearly you have the experience for the position. But other than experience itself, what kind of helped you get into this role that you are in now? Or do you think experience is what set you apart from the rest?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, so I have to think about that one. Honestly, Asurion recruited me. So they sent me, a recruiter sent me a LinkedIn message and said, hey, we're building a team of employer, within employer branding and talent attraction. Is this something, are you interested in any of these 3 roles? And that employer branding one really stuck out to me the most. The others were, social media and digital marketing, and I can do those things, but I don't get quite as excited about them as I do with relationship building and events and strategic initiatives and that sort of thing. So people connecting has always come very naturally to me, and event planning has always come very naturally to me, which I think is funny. I was actually, my parents were redoing their house, kind of renovating a few things, and so they said, come, go through all your childhood stuff in your room and clean it out. And so I went, and so I'm going through all these memories. And I remember being student government president. And I found all these posters, and we're having, Valentine's Day, where we would deliver roses to, we could buy them, I think, for $1, and we deliver them. And so I was just finding all this stuff, and I thought, this has been in my blood forever. This desire to bring people together and create an experience and have things be very special, and not just another Valentine's Day or not just another Halloween, and really creating a memory for them comes really naturally to me. And so when I interviewed for the role, I think that came through. My leader was able to see, that natural passion and how I can, see, kind of look at the stars and connect all the dots and say, our event could be much more robust if we bring in these key stakeholders. And I already have relationships with them, so let me just make an introduction or get their buy-in. And so, so she, definitely took a chance on me, I think, given that employer branding in meaning in the recruiting space wasn't something I had experience with. But I think that the skill set and the experience that I did have translated well. And then after that point, I was able to prove myself pretty quickly.
Very inspirational. Because even with me, going back to high school as well, being in DECA, being, at first, freshman year, I was just a member. Sophomore year, I started off with just being like a social media person, but then our VP ended up doing a totally different thing. So I took over that position, then junior VP, and then president. And I mean, I just got back into collegiate DECA this year, and I'm already VP of leadership. Uh, and I got some of our old DECA members from Blackman, to come in and join. And every time I see them, I'm like, "Oh, hi, my DECA babies! I've missed you so much." The high school has asked me to come back and just kind of talk about my state experiences and nationals and what I did to get there. And I'm like, well, of course, you're my babies, even though I
Yeah.
don't know probably two classes, that are behind you. I'm going to make sure that I know them now, because
Yeah.
for me, it's always been like this family and this group that I've made a name for. And I've carried that on through the years and years that are going on forward. So yeah, I
Absolutely.
miss it.
I
I definitely.
completely understand that. I think, it's great that you're able to excel, and then it's even better that you're able to bring people with you.
Mhm,
Because for me, that's always been a driving force. It's like, it's great if I can be successful and I can be on top of the world, but like, who can I bring with me? Who can I
mhm,
show, and be a role model for, so that they
mhm,
can aspire to be something, or maybe it's not just one thing I say that inspires them
mhm,
to look at things a little differently. So
mhm.
you're doing great.
I guess going back to a little bit more about events, how did you measure your event success? Was it by numbers? Was it a certain program, a certain system that you kind of kept track with? How did you do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that can be a huge challenge, right? Marketing in general is really hard to show ROI, because you don't know if folks are coming in because they saw a billboard or they heard your ad on the radio or word of mouth, or because they happen to be walking by. And
Mm-hmm.
so for free events, like we would have at the shopping centers, that was a challenge, and it was we would try to guesstimate how many folks participated. That was really that's where swag came in, or like giveaways came in really handy. So if we budgeted, 500 items for an event and we gave away 450 items, we would count that as children, and then say, 1.5 adults with those children, or excuse me, 1.5 children per adult. And so then that would give us kind of a general estimate of overall attendance. And then what we would also do is look and see, it would kind of come, it was always kind of playing catch up at the end. But we would ask the stores, like, did you see an increase in sales over the weekend? So we wouldn't necessarily find that out until maybe the next week or the next month if they reported sales, usually on a monthly basis.
Mm-hmm.
What we also tried to do were like bounce back coupons. So the cookie store was really great about that, and Chuck E. Cheese was really great about that. And those are kind of those impulse, Chuck E. Cheese outside of their birthday parties and like, a destination. They're kind of that impulse. And so it's like, oh, we're already here. Let's just go in and play a couple games. Or we're already here. Let's grab a cookie. It's lunchtime. Your event ended after lunch, but before dinner. And so we want a snack. And so we would give out those coupons during the event and then follow up with those retailers to say how many coupons were redeemed. And so that was really helpful. When we have an event with Asurion, it's more of how much we go by swag as well. We'll say we handed out, 150 t-shirts and 300 pairs of sunglasses or something. Excuse me. But we also count how many folks joined our talent network. So that was really kind of the goal, because it was great if they stopped by the booth, but could we get them interested in joining our organization? And that's generally how we would measure. When we would have other events, I'm trying to think, prior to Stones River, I did some marketing and events for small businesses. So we would do like grand openings and that sort of thing. And that was a lot easier to count, because we were looking at kind of a select invitee list,
Mm-hmm.
and then we could hand out drink coupons and again track. I think the most important thing is to find something tangible that you are able to track. Otherwise, take lots and lots of pictures and
Yeah.
guess.
Mm-hmm. Yes. One of the things that we've kind of learned in class is that every event has a typical message, or I would say mission statement for each of their events. Is that true for all events, or do you guys have a certain, is it more of a goal rather than a mission statement of what you're trying to achieve within your event?
Yeah, I think that depends on the nature of your business and then the nature of the event itself. So when we launched, a friend of mine and I co-host the Lipstick Economy podcast. So that is a podcast all about marketing to women. And it's an extension of an event she has annually called Red Letter Day, which is solely a marketing to women conference, the half day conference. And that is all about sharing data. The lipstick economy is the 100 million women in the US who make 85% of all consumer purchases. So we really hold the purse strings. I joke that I joke with my husband that we bought his Silverado because I wanted to buy that, not because he wanted his Silverado. But so when we knew we wanted to launch this podcast, and we went ahead and recorded some episodes in advance, but we decided to do a podcast launch party around this time last year. And the goal for that specifically was to build awareness, to put our faces with the podcast sort of brand association. But we also had a live podcast recording there. And so that was, and we picked some really key women who are super powerful in and of themselves in their own careers. But they were launching a brand new organization called AWIN, Advancing Women in Nashville. And so we wanted to talk about that and share their story. And it all, again, that whole connecting people. I brought Asurion in as a partner, as a founding member of that, because of Red Letter Day. And one of the women and I were having a conversation, and she was like, I have this crazy idea. And I was like, absolutely do it, and count Asurion in. And so it was really neat to kind of share that story, but then also, put some branding, put a face to a podcast, which you normally just click on and you listen to, right? You don't think about what folks look like or who they are. And so the objective for that was to build awareness and to have a party, to have a fun party, right? And of course, we invited them to go ahead and listen. We had launched the podcast at that point, and so those are kind of our hardcore followers, right? But that's very different from an employer branding event where we're really looking to recruit software engineers. We have an open house, have had a couple of them so far in the last couple of years, where we invite folks who are interested in a career in software development at Asurion. And so we invite them into our space, our downtown office. They come, there's some beverages and refreshments and snacks, but really they're hearing firsthand from our own developers what it's like to work at Asurion, what kind of projects they work on, what a journey team is. And so they're getting to experience that brand. And ultimately we ask them to apply, and then hopefully we hire some folks from that. So that mission is very different. That the objective for those two events, and then even for the shopping center, was to create a community gathering place. So there's an overarching goal of, reestablishing shopping centers or the malls as community gathering places, which is what they used to be back in their heyday. And so by doing these types of events where you're inviting families in to, again, enjoy an experience, create a memory, even if that's visiting Santa, so that then it becomes habit for them. If we would have monthly events. And then around the holidays, we were having, Svetlana, I think it was daily events. It felt like every week.
Oh, I know.
Leading up to Christmas. But, we get them in the habit of, okay, they probably come in the same entrance every time. They know where the bathrooms are. They know which stores are there. And so they feel comfortable. So then when they do need that gift, or they need that perfect blouse for an upcoming event, they know, okay, I'm going to go in that same entrance. I know Penny's is here, Dillard's is there. And so to answer your question, it really depends on the nature of the event and the nature of, what your business is.
Okay. I guess with all of those events, especially at the mall, or any of the coupons or deals or just holiday things that you would give out to the customers, did you have a way or like a program that would like tell you, hey, this is what people are looking into now? Or was it more of a common sense type of looking, literally just observing and seeing what they were going for, and you went off of that?
In terms of what kinds of deals they might be looking for?
Yeah, for example, I remember the mall doing like a Mother's Day out 125 or like the $100 gift cards to like certain stores. But how did you know that these people were going to come in and do this to later on receive this? Like, did you have a certain program that was telling you, hey, these are going to be the days, this is going to be the trend this week, so do this type of deal?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we offered that promotion 3 times a year. It was Mother's Day, around back to school, tax-free weekend, and then again during the holidays. And so research shows that Mother's Day shoppers typically do most of the majority of their shopping the week leading up to Mother's Day. So where you've got like, very strategic holiday shoppers, and they might be looking at Amazon Prime Day, or they might be looking for specific sales throughout kind of leading up. Some people budget all year long to spend for Christmas. Mother's Day is definitely the week leading up. So we said, well, that sounds great. Then why don't we do, shop for mom and keep something for yourself? And so we said they could spend, I think for Mother's Day, we had a lower price point because we know that they're going to spend, less than $100. So I think we said spend $100, get a $20 gift card or $25 gift card. And then we made that $25 gift card for 2 of the anchors, or I forgot who we selected for that third one at the time, but that made sense for that shopper, right? Where they could, if they wanted to spend $100 on mom and then go get something else for an extra 25, they could do it, and mom would feel extra special. So they had a week to spend the $100, and they just brought in their receipts that they shopped at least 3 stores, and then we would give them the gift card. The second period was for back to school, which again is a natural one. We upped that one, I think, to I think that one might have been $100 also. Given that some, families might have 1 kid, they're already stretched in how much they're spending for back to school. And again, that was leading up to tax-free weekend. So we would have that. We already knew that shoppers were coming in tax-free weekend. So we might have that promotion the week before or the week after, because retailers would say, hey, our sales were up this weekend, but they were down the weekend after, for example. And so we were inviting shoppers to come spend that money, if they wanted to avoid that, the tax-free weekend shoppers, they could, but still be rewarded in a similar way. And then for holiday, we did up that spend a little bit more. I think it was $150, and they got a $25 gift card. But we would do that again the week after Black Friday. So it would start on kind of Cyber Monday. And we did that for the same reason, knowing that we were going to be super busy. Sales were going to be great for the retailers that entire week and weekend of Thanksgiving. Because at that point, we're open on Thanksgiving and Black Friday and Small Business Saturday, and Sunday. And so we would start that promotion on Cyber Monday through the following week to, again, incentivize people to come back in.
Okay. One more question before we get into our fun questions.
Sure.
Let me see, where is it? With connections and vendors, have you been able to take, let's say, from Stones River Mall, and all of those event people that, would come in, have you been able to take them on your journey into your following positions, or are they just kind of names that you'll always have in your phone just in case if you need somebody there?
Yeah, I will always have them in my phone, but I've already actually brought a lot of those relationships with me. So the vendor that we buy our swag from, I've been using her. I think I wrote a testimonial for a website that I've been using her for like the last 8 years, and how she's followed me from role to role, because I built that relationship and really enjoyed working with her. She already knew my expectations. I'm not one to hand out, chapstick or, kind of tchotchkes. I really like those really thoughtful, actually useful items that people are going to take with them and keep. Like this, this globe that I'm playing with here, that was from Celebrate Nashville. They had an event a couple of weeks ago. But it's really, again, I didn't have to start over with a new relationship. I appreciated all the help that she provided to me in that other role where we had a limited budget. And so now we have much more budget. And so it's nice to say, hey, I want to keep working with you. Sam the Balloon Man is another one who comes to mind.
Okay.
Yeah, he has done a lot for us. He did a lot at the shopping center, setting up decor for all of our events. And so I was still involved with some organizations in town. And so we would have him and always referring him, you know, when folks are thinking like, how can we kind of do this big? How can we think about some decor? And, you know, it's always about bringing height to your booth or to your, so everything's not just flat on the table. And so we brought him along. And then funny enough, we had a holiday celebration within our department, within HR, and we wanted some kind of activity. So we did a cookie decorating contest, and we all were divided up into teams. And so the cookie store supported that. So it was really nice to say, hey, we need, I think we ordered, you know, 300 cookies or 400 cookies. And they provided all the frosting and all the decoration, you know, the sprinkles and all of this. And so, and I knew the cookies were going to be delicious. And it wasn't a matter of finding another vendor who could do that. I knew that they were capable of that, which worked out really well, because then another team said, hey, we heard you guys did cookie decorating. Who is your vendor? And so I love that, again, connecting people and sharing this, you know, sharing those resources.
That's awesome. All right. Fun question time. What has been your most fun event that you've done your entire career?
Oh my gosh. That one's very difficult to answer because I love all of them. I would say the most fun I've done in my whole career. That's a loaded question. I think I've really enjoyed all of them. I really, really have enjoyed all of them. I think we had an opportunity at Stones River to work with a local Nashville group called Hip Hughes, where they offered DIY screen printing. So they'll come to your place and set up screen printers. These, you know, if you've ever seen them, you put the fabric in, you bring the thing down, and you actually manually do the screen printing. And so we did that for a Princess and Superheroes event at the mall, and the kids designed their own capes. And so I was dying to use them for another style of event. And so we brought them to Red Letter Day, that Marketing to Women conference that I mentioned. And so this was a couple years ago. So not 2019, 2018. And so we offered that for attendees. So they could print a wine tote, because we had it at City Winery. So they printed a wine tote that says, we'll give marketing advice for wine. And then we also had them print t-shirts, so they could have one or the other or both. But it had the Nashville skyline, but it was made up out of all these different terms, these words that created the skyline. And so we had marketing and technology and healthcare and, you know, sounds and music and all of this. And so I love still seeing people wear that shirt and knowing, again, they had such a great experience.
That's awesome. Has there been an event that there was just one person there that just stressed you out so much, just, you know, a guest, and you handled the situation great, but at the same time, that person still kind of like resonates in your head of like, why were they even here? They'd made my day that much more stressful. Has that happened to you yet?
Yeah. It's funny because at the malls, you know, we worked with the public. And so you never know what you're going to get, who's having a good day or a bad day. And it makes it very, very interesting. Now I'm dealing more, you know, in a different space where we're more working with folks who are intentionally coming to an event for a purpose. They might be looking for a role, or they might be at, you know, attending TEDx Nashville to hear a series of amazing speakers. And so it's just a slightly different clientele. I'd have to think back, gosh, there were all sorts of characters at Stones River, and even at Golf Mill when I had the shopping center in Chicago. I think we had stuff disappear, which was always very interesting. You know, we at Golf Mill, we had another Halloween event, and I had bought these giant cauldrons to put all of the candy and the bouncy balls and the tattoos and like all the stuff we were giving away. And so after the event, you know, the event was only a couple hours long. So we put everything under the tables at the candy stations, just to indicate the event was over. And then the maintenance team was going to come and help pick everything up. And we went and we pulled the tablecloths off, and these giant cauldrons full of stuff, I mean, hundreds of bouncy balls are just missing. And so somebody walked away with that. And I thought, well, maybe you needed 100, 200 bouncy balls more than we did. But that's definitely an interesting one. I think, when we would have the line for Santa, the closer we got to Christmas, the more panicked shoppers would be. And, they're tired of waiting in line, but Santa was also sitting in that chair for hours at a time and would need to, relieve himself in the restroom or take his lunch break. And so people would be very interesting. But again, you just try to stay calm and explain, with a smile that this is the case, or if anything else, we would try to offer them something while they're in line if we knew the lines were going to be excessive. Here's a buy one get one cookie. Go enjoy it.
Yeah. Is that what you typically have to do? Like just take a deep breath to calm your stresses or your worries whenever going through an event? Is that kind of your typical way of, just
it is
take a deep breath, you're okay, you're fine, you can't do anything anyways, no point to stress.
That's exactly it. It's just sort of recenter and understand, let me hear. Most of the time people who complain, they just want to be heard. And so it's like, if I'm going to be that person to listen to whatever it is they're upset about, do they feel better after? Do they feel like they're heard? Or also like, did they have a really valid point? Is that something we do need to take into consideration and change next time? Like the first Halloween I mentioned, it was like, okay, that's great. We don't need to have everything centered in center court because then nobody, let's spread that out. And so sometimes it can be a learning moment.
And then I guess last question, what do you think is the most exciting thing you've brought to Asurion? And what do you think it gave you kind of most exciting thing, but also kind of the most, you feel like this is what you were meant to do, I guess the most purposeful event or thing that you've brought to the company?
That's a great question. I hope that it is my energy and my way of thinking has always been, one part creative, one part super out of the box, and then, one part innovation. And so it's sort of, I mentioned Asurion we didn't have a brand or a consistent brand, even in Nashville, much less in other in other locations. And our headquarters are here. And so I think bringing Asurion to the stage, to that level of sponsoring TEDx, of sponsoring 3686 and Live on the Green, and sponsoring a marketing event, that was my big sell. My selling point when I came on was like, look, we have a story to tell. What better way to do it than to a room full of marketers? And let's have our VP of diversity and inclusion be the keynote speaker, so she can tell the story of how Asurion is committed to this and how we're forward thinking and innovative in our own right. And so I think getting folks to think bigger than, oh, let's sponsor this 5K, or let's sponsor this, this small $1,000 scholarship. And like, those are necessary, but like, if we can be thinking on a bigger scale. We have a site in Moncton, New Brunswick in Canada. And last year we sponsored it's called, it has its own, I was thinking in French what it is, but it's the World Congress for Acadians. And so Acadian is one of the native Canadian cultures. And so they have this huge festival every 5 years, and it changes locations. And just coincidentally, it was going to be held in Moncton last year. And so we were a sponsor of this huge world event where folks were coming from France, they're coming from Louisiana. It's kind of like Cajun style. So they're coming from all over the world. And then we had our video play on the screen before the opening night of this live concert. And then we had that booth, the interactive booth with the tech talent quiz and all that, but it was also translated into French, which was super cool to see, English and French side by side, and really being like, hey, we're a huge, we've been in this city for 20 years. We're not a fly by night company. We're invested here and we speak your language, again, that just got people thinking much bigger, and it got a lot of attention from leadership, just sort of like, whoa, we're doing what? So what's our presence? So, and it's in French, and what are we offering them? And that was a big moment for me. I think, attaching our name to the Lipstick podcast is huge too. we have all of these downloads, you know, and folks are hearing, you know, mine and Jamie's voices, but then they also hear that plug for Asurion at the end. And so it's associating Asurion with women, with, you know, data and technology and all of this stuff. I think Siri thinks I'm trying to talk to her. But so I think that that's what I'm bringing to the organization is, you know, that we can create an experience because we already have this great experience. Once you're part of the company, we just need to share that story and invite people to join us.
Yeah, I feel like that point that you made, you know, in Canada and having that video playing in English and French, me being from Russia, and whenever like I go into like certain businesses, or for example, me working for Red Bull, right? I really appreciate whenever, even if it may not be like in Russian, that they're not just doing, you know, your basic English and Spanish, you know, they're someone speaking in Austrian, someone is French, you know, and I've always appreciated that kind of like diversity, but inclusivity, like of all these different countries and cultures coming together and, you know, being one. For example, even the ice skating center in Antioch, whenever you either come in or when you're leaving in the lobby area, all around you, it's like different countries saying, you know, thank you, danke. In Russian, it's spasiba, you know, in English, thank you. And that just kind of makes me want to come back more rather than it just being thanks, come again, you know.
Exactly. Because you feel like
so,
you're being like, you feel like you've been seen, right? You're like,
yeah,
oh, hey, they know that, you know, that their clientele is more diverse than, you know, we're all speaking English, of course, right? But
yeah.
like, it is cool to see that and feel understood and seen.
Yeah, it makes me feel like a little extra special. I'm like,
It does.
yeah, I may have lived here for 15 years, but hey, Russia's still in my heart. So, I mean, for me, it's
Exactly.
always going to be my home. Well, that is all of the questions that I have for
Awesome.
you. So, thank you so much once
You're
again.
so welcome.
Um, Once again, I wanted to remind you that I am part of the Tourism and Hospitality Management program at MTSU. It started just in 2019, so it's very, very new. We have 3 different kind of focus areas: travel, hospitality, and event planning. So if you know of any high school students, or maybe, you know, some people that you still keep in contact that are
Yeah.
looking forward into going into a degree like that, definitely make sure that, you know, they're directed towards that. If they're wanting, you know, sports, then of course leisure sports and tourism would be the better option. But if that's something that they've always been interested in doing, like myself, definitely send them that way. And we really appreciate you speaking to me, which then, you know, the rest of the class will also see.
Oh gosh.
Um,
That's great.
um, but yeah, the hospitality industry is definitely growing. Hundreds of job vacancies
Yeah.
are all over the US, if not all over the world, which is we're looking for a skilled workforce of people, not just, you know, coming out of high school, hey, you're going to be in the front desk of a hotel. You know,
Mhm.
this is a program that's looking for growth,
Mhm.
just kind of like the software program that you were telling me about in the very beginning. But yeah, that
Exactly.
is
That's what's
all.
critical is offering, you know, not just a job today, but a career, right? It's a whole
Exactly.
journey. I did want to
Exactly.
tell you, I do have friends who are event planners. They have their own
hmm
companies and have won awards for the work
hmm
that they do. So if that's something you're interested in working for,
hmm
specifically like an event planning company,
hmm
where they're providing their expertise and guidance for like the Asurians of the world who are going to be
Yeah.
at a joint conference, they execute that from top to bottom.
hmm
So Fallon is someone I have in mind. She's amazing. I worked with her in other spaces, and so if that's
hmm
ever something that you just want to have a
hmm
conversation with and kind of pick her brain and learn
Awesome.
a little more, because
Thank
I think
you.
there's a couple sides to it, right? You either work for an organization and you do all their events exclusively, or you can
hmm
work for an organization like that where you're doing events for different companies,
hmm
which is kind of neat. So as you get more into your class, let me know,
Yes. Of
and we can
course. Of course.
introduce you.
Yes.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
awesome. I'm going to stop recording here.